The stories shared on It Takes Balls are unique to the individual sharing. Always speak with your trusted medical provider for treatment options specific to you. Welcome back to It Takes Balls, presented by Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. Today I'm joined by Torsten Koehler. I think I said that right. I'll let him say it once I finish introducing him. He's the founder of Love Your Nuts Foundation in South Africa and a testicular cancer survivor. Torsten, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Well, you pronounce this perfectly right. It's Koehler, but it's good like this.
So awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So as mentioned, you're a testicular cancer survivor, but before we get to that, tell me about who you are outside of testicular cancer.
Yeah. I'm born and raised in Namibia. That is the country just north of South Africa on the west coast of Africa. Ancestors are German, so third generation born in Namibia. That's why I've still got the German accent. We still speak German at home. I grew up on a cattle farm, went to school in a very small town. And after finished school, I was a biology teacher in Windhoek, the capital of Namibia. I traveled a lot worldwide and then moved to Cape Town in 2007. And since then, I work as a graphic designer and started the charity Love Your Nuts here in Cape Town.
Awesome. So I read that you were diagnosed in 1995. So you're coming up on 20 years. Or is that right?
28 years. Yeah, 28 years in August. Yes. Yeah, it was in 95 that it was a lonely and dark journey because 95, there was not really internet and support groups like you have it today. So I couldn't find anybody else to talk to, and writing became my therapy at the end of the day. That's why, I written letters to a friend in Germany and realized if I write it down, what I think about cancer and what bothers me, I realized it's like laying it off. It's not in your mind constantly. It's like it's on paper now. And these letters at the end of the day turned into the books that I've written.
I apologize. It is 30 years. I should know that. I'm almost 30 and that's scary.
Well, I'm almost 60 and that is scary.
All right. So you said you were a world traveler. So where were you when you got this diagnosis? Where in the world were you?
I was in Namibia. I was a teacher at a German school there, a biology teacher, and actually I found out about the cancer while preparing lessons for sex education for the grade 5s. I bought a children's book about sex education in Germany because I thought, well, I've studied in English and Afrikaans, but to teach that topic to German-speaking children at the age of 11, 12, so I thought buying a book that was written for children, that I get the right slang and the right wording. And I was lying in bed in the evening reading this children's book, just preparing lessons actually for the next day. And there was a chapter on all the diseases. And there was a small paragraph that said testicular cancer is most common between 15 and 45. And I was 30 at that age, lying in bed reading this. And I checked my nuts and I felt a little lump, not bigger than the tip of my finger. That's how I found out. Actually, I read it in a children's book.
That's amazing. So at that time, what was, had you heard about testicular cancer before you were reading that book, or was it even on your radar?
Not at all. Even like I said, I studied biology. I never heard about testicular cancer. And when I read it in that book, I went to the doctor immediately. I think that's typical men. We don't talk about our health and feelings and problems. And we don't easily go to the doctor. So I found 100 excuses not to go because I said, okay, maybe that lump was always there. I didn't felt it before the time because I was not checking really. You find 100 excuses not to go to the doctor. But it bothered me so much that after 14 days, I decided I just have to go for peace of mind. And then it was cancer. So I detected it early, luckily. But it took me 14 days before I went to the doctor.
Yeah. Talk to me about what healthcare is like over there. Because for those listening in the United States, I mean, we know what it's like here, but we don't know what it's like.
The majority of the people I would say in Africa, not only South Africa or in Namibia, doesn't have a medical aid. So they depend on public hospitals and they're normally overcrowded or you're on a waiting list to get treatment and sometimes the medication is not available. So it's really a bad state. I was working for at a government school way back, so I had a medical aid by government, and that's why I had easier access to healthcare. So when I was diagnosed, I went to my GP. He referred me then to a specialist, and they immediately made a sonar scan. And then I went into a private hospital because I had the medical aid, and I was treated immediately. So it was like actually normal, I think, like in the States or in Europe. I can compare that because years later I worked in Munich, and I went for a checkup there, but I took all the documentation with me from my surgery and everything in Namibia. And the doctor in Munich in Germany said to me, we would have done it the same way. So although it's in Africa, far away in the bush, it was, in that case, it was treated the same way. But the majority of people doesn't have that access. Still today, and my cancer is now 28 years ago, and still today, a lot of people don't have access to medical care or even access to information. And it's often language barriers. They don't speak English. It's not available in their language, so it's quite difficult compared to the US, where everybody understands the written English, or everybody can understand. Or if it's not English, or if you live in part of the States where it's a lot of Spanish-speaking people, then you will get a Spanish translation of that, or a Spanish website where you can find the information, which is not the case if it comes to African languages.
Yeah, well, with Love Your Nuts, you're definitely raising awareness, so that part is hopefully being kind of mitigated.
Yeah. I choose that name because it's cheeky, it's funny, and men make jokes below the belt, but if it gets serious, they don't talk. So if they see the name Love Your Nuts, then they think it's something funny, something cheeky, something kinky. And then they quite shocked, oh, it's about testicular cancer, but then I've got their attention. That's actually what I want.
So talk to me about when you finally went to the doctor 14 days later and you found out that it was testicular cancer. What was that like for you?
I think at the age of 30, when the doctor says you've got testicular cancer, it's quite aggressive. We have to remove your right testicle tomorrow morning. I think my world shattered into a million pieces. I was 30. I traveled before, so I backpacked the world in 1991, or mainly Europe. So I traveled a lot. And when I heard that diagnosis, it was like that I always knew that my life going to be short, or why cancer in that early stage. So it was really, I couldn't cope with it. And I always say that it was on a Thursday, I got the diagnosis. On the Friday, there was the surgery, Friday morning. And then the next Wednesday, so 5 days later, I got the results from, because it went to the laboratory, blah, 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 all kinds of things. And I always say these 5 days were the worst days of my life, because you can't focus on anything. The one moment you think, what if the doctor tells me I've got only 6 months left, then you actually start crying because you think, well, it can't be, I'm only 30 years old. And the next moment, you think, what if it's early detected and I've got a good chance to survive? Then you actually cry because of happiness, kind of thing. So with emotions on a roller coaster these 5 days. And during that time, I made a bucket list as well, places I like to see before I die, because you feel like you have to prepare yourself for the worst, but you can't actually, because you don't know what's coming. So that was a scary moment. Helpless, and nobody else can help you, and there are no answers. You've got thousands of questions, but there are no answers. And it was actually easier when I got the results, because then you know where you stand. Even if I think it's for every cancer patient, not only testicular cancer, if they know where they stand, what's their chance, and then you can prepare for something, whatever it is. But if you don't know, if it doesn't have an answer yet, then it really drives you nuts. It's crazy.
Yeah. Jumping back to, so when you were preparing the lessons, you went through with teaching the lesson, I presume. So what was in your mind while you knew something was off and you were still presenting these lessons to the kids?
I didn't mention it to the kids then. Although I spoke about the STDs because it was part of the education thing, but I didn't mention the testicular cancer because I thought, I don't know if it's true kind of thing. So I never heard of it before because we all hear about breast cancer and brain tumors and that would be normal, but I never heard of you can have cancer in your testicles. So it was like, even if, like I said, studied biology where you could think, okay, somewhere during your studies, you will learn or realize you can get cancer actually in any body part. But it was not on my radar at all. So I didn't mention it.
Yeah. So once you had your orchiectomy, and I presume you were maybe out of work for recovery after?
Yeah, I had 2 sessions of 5 days each. And in between, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks recovery time. So after the first week, I felt actually good. I was not, yeah, well, it felt like a little bit like flu-ish kind of thing, but I was still fine. And I couldn't sit at home just thinking about what if. So I went back to teaching. So I carried on teaching. But then the second session that I had, that hit me really hard. And then I took, I think, 2 weeks off after the treatment because I was just too weak and too in pain. And that's mainly because of chemotherapy. And obviously the mind on a roller coaster. So I took time off afterwards, but it was not that I went into a rehab program afterwards. That is like 28 years ago in Africa. I don't think there was something like this at all.
So at what point did you tell your students, if at all you did tell them what was going on?
I actually, when I came out of hospital after the surgery, I went to the school principal and told him, look, it's testicular cancer and I have to get treatment. And he said to me, what should I tell the colleagues? Because I was at a school, you're actually a little bit of a public figure if you're a teacher, and then Windhoek is not that big, so everybody knows you. And I said to him, well, tell them I've got testicular cancer. What else do you want to tell them before they start some other rumors and make up stories? It's testicular cancer, and tell them. So he told the colleagues, and I spoke openly in class about that. Because when I had chemotherapy, there was a 12-year-old who had chemotherapy as well because he had testicular cancer. And when I was back at school, after my treatment, I thought, all these boys that are passing on the corridor every day, they're at risk and nobody tells them that they should check. So I used 1 lesson a year at biology. And I said, actually, because girls were sitting in class as well, I always said, no books out today. We're going to talk boobs and boards. And I actually spoke their language. And I said to them, both these cancers is self-examination. Both these cancers, you search for lumps. Both these cancers, if you check them early, you've got quite a good chance to survive. And I'm a living example of that. And then I shared my story, what happened. And that I did every year. So I openly talked about what happened to me. And the kids also responded to that. And parents as well, school parents, they came and asked, how are you? Because they realize I speak. It's no problem for me to talk about that embarrassing topic.
Yeah. Was there any kind of like apprehension with the school system, like for you to be teaching this lesson? Because I'm thinking about like here in the US, like parents like to be really involved in what their kids are learning, especially nowadays. So I don't know, like if parents here would be open to
accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never came across any parent or complaint that I speak about that topic. But often parents say to me, thank you for doing this. Then I don't have to talk to my boy about this. Because for a father to tell his son, well, you have to check it's for a lot of men or fathers, it's embarrassing. And for the boy as well. So for them, it was luckily there's a teacher there. He told them, so it's fine. So I never had any complaint actually from parent side, from school board side, that I used a biology lesson to talk about that topic.
That's great. Yeah. That's great news. So 1995, I mean, so over here in the US, we know Dr. Einhorn and his crew, like kind of pioneered the chemo. I don't know how that kind of spread to the world, or if there were doctors in Africa and Europe who were kind of making the same discoveries. Were you treated with the same chemo regimen that Dr. Einhorn created?
Exactly the same. I met him. I was in Denver at the Testicular Cancer World Summit in 2017. I was a guest speaker there, and I met Dr. Einhorn there. And yeah, it's actually his treatment is what they use here as well. And it's actually his treatment from when I had it. It's what he created. They use the same here.
Wow.
So it's spread around the world.
Yeah. So he's a legend. I mean, that guy has saved thousands of
Yeah,
lives.
definitely.
So you mentioned your first week of chemo made you kind of feel flu-like, and then the second week was a little bit more intense. Talk to me more about like the side effects and stuff that you experienced.
The first week was like I said, was like fluish. You feel tired. The second session after the second or during the second session, I had lost taste. So if I ate a steak or drink water, it tasted the same. And I felt like, okay, I'm hungry. I like to eat something. But the same moment you feel like, well, where's the toilet? I feel more like vomiting. So it was that completely mixed feeling. Nothing was, if it comes to food, nothing was right. And you're hungry and you're not hungry. So completely mixed. I had, which I never had in my life, constipation, like mad, painful that I was lying on my bed, wiping sweat with a towel. Although they warned me before the time and said, well, drink fruit teas and things because that can happen. But I never had something like this. And that was, I think, the worst was that constipation and pain. Actually, if you feel like you explode and you can't do anything. I lost my hair. I had wounds in my mouth. Yeah, that was actually about it.
Yeah. Were you advised before chemo or before your orchiectomy in 1995 to bank sperm, or was that kind of part of the chemo treatment plan by then?
When the urologist, before he did the surgery, he said to me, he doesn't have a lot of information on testicular cancer, what he gave me, but he referred me actually to the Cancer Association in Namibia. So it's like an NPO helping people with cancer and supporting cancer. So I drove to their head office in Windhoek and asked about testicular cancer and things, and they gave me information. And the guy who worked there said, please go for sperm banking before the time. So they actually pointed it out that I should go for sperm banking. And in Namibia during that time, there was no sperm bank. So I drove to South Africa, to Cape Town for sperm banking. So,
wow.
Quite hectic.
So that's good to hear that that's been a thing for at least the last 30 years. I mean, maybe they knew about it before that, but I didn't know if that was a more recent addition to the plan. So chemo ended. What was next for you?
After chemo, I started teaching again. I think the emotional part was worse. So the wound healed, and I felt well again. But I think the emotional thing got over me. It got to me over time, and it was not directly after the surgery. I would say it's 5-6 months after the surgery. I felt that I became depressed. I had the feeling like life doesn't make sense. What's the purpose? If I die, there's another biology teacher who can take over my lesson, kind of thing. And I got along well with the kids. I really enjoyed teaching, and I often joked. And after the chemotherapy, or when I was back then at teaching, they did the same jokes, and I responded differently. So often after school, when I went home, and then I thought, oh, I was not fair today, because they made the same joke like before cancer, and I responded completely different. So that they actually most probably thought, okay, what's happening now? Because he's not the same anymore. And that is where I realized I have to do something for myself. So I taught another year. The cancer was August 95, and I stopped teaching end of 96. So I taught another year, and in doing 96, I became a very depressed person. Life didn't make sense anymore. Nothing was fun anymore. Everything irritated me. If it was the school, the kids, the parents, the colleagues, family, friends. So I became really, I was in a dark space. And I'm by default actually a happy chappy and a very positive person. So it irritated me that I realized myself that I'm not in a happy space. And there I decided I'm going to resign and do something for myself. Although there were days that I thought, actually, I don't want to leave, because you are in a community that knows you. You've got a network there. And my idea was I resign and I go backpacking again, like I did before cancer, and I travel the world. That the question, how are you, becomes again, how are you before cancer? Because after cancer in Namibia, the colleagues or parents, if they ask you, how are you, it was always related to the cancer. It was always referred to the cancer. And I wanted to close that chapter. That was the little bit of a downside to being open about it from the beginning. So it helped me because I talked about it, and talking about the topic helped me to process it and come to rest with it. But because the community knew I'm open about this and they can ask and talk about this, in 1996, I reached a stage where I actually wanted to close the chapter and not talk about that anymore. And that was quite difficult because the people were used to ask me. And that's where the idea came up with, I go backpacking again. If I'm somewhere in the world and somebody asks, how are you? Then it's how are you again, because they don't know about the cancer history.
Mm-hmm.
It was difficult because it was like two words. I was in a comfort zone, because in a community that cared for me, and I actually had to do something for myself. And the idea was moving out completely as alone, traveling the world, and you're going to be in a different country where nobody knows you and you don't know anybody. So it was quite difficult, the decision. But at the end of the day, well, what I did was actually 2 pieces of paper. What keeps me at the school and what drives me away. I've written it down, and then weeks later you change, then you stretch it on this list, put on this list. And at the end of the day, it was actually quite clear. You can always come back and teach again, but now you have to do something for yourself. And that's why I decided, well, I'm going to resign. And before I resigned, I got an implant because I'd not immediately opted for that implant. And when I decided I like to go backpacking and traveling, it was like closing all the chapters and seeing myself in front of the mirror just with one test was always like a reminder of cancer. So a year later, I went for surgery again just to get an implant before I went backpacking. And that actually helped. For me, it helped a lot. It felt like I always jokingly said, now I'm balanced again because everything is there again. And that really helped. Emotionally, it helped me a lot. Although I know the one nut is fake, and I post this on social media as well. My one nut is fake because the real one tried to kill me. So I joke about these things. But it really helped me emotionally to deal with the cancer. And I know there's a lot of guys who don't opt for it, say, well, it's not important for me. In my case, it helped. For me, it was important.
Yeah, I think you're the first one I've talked to on this podcast who has an implant. So any insight you have on that is great because, there might be somebody who's considering it.
Yeah, I think there's often guys that think because it's not natural, it doesn't hang natural. It's in your way kind of thing because it doesn't move like the normal testicles. And I always say I'm a marathon runner, and the longest distance I ran was 56 miles, and it doesn't make a difference. So from the outside it looks normal. It's attached with little strings. They have to. The only thing is it does move up and down if it's cold or hot, like the other testicle, because it's attached and they have to attach it. And I joke about this often as well, because if they don't attach it, quite often our guys ask me, why is it attached? That it can't drop. And I said, well, if you don't attach it, 28 years of gravity that it will be at my knees some other time, because that's why they actually have to attach it. But it's in a way that it's, if you lie on your side or something, I think that is where the guys think, okay, this thing is fake and it's harder than the normal one. So if I lie on my side, or it's painful. I don't feel it at all. I don't feel it. So for me, it works perfectly well.
Interesting. All right. You mentioned the marathon running. We'll use that as a segue into Love Your Nuts. I know one big thing that Love Your Nuts does is you have like Speedos that are branded, and then I see lots of pictures on social of guys running in those. So talk to me about the inception of the foundation, and then how you're raising awareness now.
Yeah. As I mentioned, at school, I always used one lesson to make the children aware, the kids aware about testicular cancer. And I stopped teaching 2005. And 2006, I was backpacking. And when I returned to Namibia, a former student invited me for coffee. And he said to me, because you made us aware, I went to the doctor in time. I'm 16. I've got testicular cancer, and you saved my life. And he's actually the reason I started the charity. Because I realized, just because I'm open about what happened to me, I save lives. Because once guys know that they're at risk at a young age and that they should check once a month, then they will. Because this body part is so important for men. That's why you get all these names for it, the crown jewels and everything. And it's your future and everything. So once they know, they will check. And he's actually the reason that I've started. So I've written the book in German. The book is my feelings on paper. So how I found out, what I did, went backpacking, did everything on the bucket list, and how it was returning to Namibia again, started teaching at my old school, how difficult it was again to fit in there, because my whole view on life changed completely. I backpacked for 2 years. And the German book was published 2004 in Germany. And when I moved to Cape Town in 2007, friends, years, obviously majority non-German speaking, and they said to me, get that book translated. We like to read it as well. And then I spent money on the translation, and the English version is called Love Your Nuts. Testicular Cancer Touched My Life. And with that book, I started a Facebook page. And I'd quoted out of my book, and I make these cheeky comments like, yes, my one nut is fake because the real one tried to kill me. And it's fantastic on Friday, whatever gets into your pants, make sure it's not testicular cancer. And suddenly corporates contacted me and said, well, we've got a health day. Do you give talks as well? And I thought, okay, I've been a teacher before. I don't mind standing in front of people and talking. The topic is not embarrassing for me. So I started giving talks. And then I thought, now it's heading somewhere. But just to start a charity, people are going to ask you what you're going to do with the money that you raise. And because that former student of mine, he was always in the back of my mind. But I thought, okay, he's actually the reason or I'm the reason that he went to the doctor. So I felt like I have to do something. And then I decided to start Love Your Nuts. So I changed that Facebook page, that book page, into the charity page. And then I registered Love Your Nuts. And at the beginning, I was all over the show because I thought, okay, I can do this. I get runners, I get swimmers, I get cyclists. I have cooking competitions with meatballs and all kinds of things. And then my sister said to me, you're all over the show. It's too much. Scale it down to just to a few things and then concentrate on that. So I took a week off and I booked myself into a guest farm here outside Cape Town for a week. And I had my laptop with me and I restructured Love Your Nuts. And there I decided I'm going to concentrate on education, which is part of that is my book that I give to schools and for the library. I go to schools, give talks. I try to get guys to go and talk to children, and I give talks at in the corporate world or events. And then I thought somehow I need awareness that people know there is somebody that they can book for talks or that they can invite to their school. And then that's why I decided on awareness is the second leg actually of Love Your Nuts. And I focus on running and cycling because it's young guys mainly. in that sport. So it's actually my target group. And marathons and cycle events, they are normally huge. There's a lot of people that watches. There's a lot of photos that are taken, and it's shared on social media. That's why I concentrated on that, which really did a lot. And these runners, they normally start a fundraiser and they raise funds. They often get stopped or talked to when they run because they run slowly. That really helped. So that is the awareness drive, actually. And I'm open to any other nutty idea that if somebody comes and say, well, for instance, in Durban and here in South Africa, there's a hockey team. They play in the Love Your Nuts way because one of the fathers lost his son to testicular cancer. And they're doing that and raise funds for Love Your Nuts. And if they've got enough funds, then I fly to Durban and I get talks at schools in their area. And the third thing that I do is actually more at the background, that is support. That what I didn't have somebody to talk to in 1995, I offer that to guys who've just been diagnosed and who feel like I just like to talk to somebody because it's often easier to talk to a survivor than to family or friends. So that is actually the three legs of Love Your Nuts.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, even if it was just that one student that said that you saved his life, I mean, that would make it all worth it, but I'm sure that you've had such a larger impact. What kind of feedback have you gotten over the years?
Yeah, I've got a case where somebody contacted me and said, well, he saw on Facebook guys running in a speedo where it says right in front, Love Your Nuts, and he went onto the Facebook page and then onto my website. There's a video clip on how to check. And then he contacted me and said, thanks for that Facebook post. I've got testicular cancer. I detected it so early, I don't even need chemotherapy. Then the trustees of the Love Your Nuts Foundation, they're all testicular cancer survivors. The one guy was at a corporate talk, and 2 months later, he felt a lump and went to the doctor, and he said to me, you told me about this, otherwise I wouldn't have checked. And the other guy is somebody who had testicular cancer already. He went through chemo, and I supported him emotionally. So all the trustees of the foundations are testicular cancer survivors as well that actually survived or got support from Love Your Nuts. And I often get emails or WhatsApp say thank you for what you do, or on Messenger people contact me and say thanks for what you did. I went to the doctor, and then I support them for a while, and then normally they disappear because they're dealing with a cancer kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then after 2-3 years, they suddenly pop up again and say, I'm well now, how can I get involved? And that's often where they start fundraiser, or if they're not in Cape Town and they live in another city, they're willing to give talks at corporates there because I can't be everywhere. So they normally come back after a while. But there are quite a number of guys who actually come back and say, thanks for what you do. I went to the doctor, or they tell me about somebody, yeah, my brother had it, or I've got a cousin who had testicular cancer as well. So it really raises awareness, definitely.
Well, that's amazing. You're definitely a hero. So the guys that wear the Speedos and do these runs, are they primarily testicular cancer survivors who are spreading awareness, or is it just any guy who will wear it?
Normally it's any guy. There's a group of guys, they studied together in Cape Town, and they stayed friends after university. And they had a friend who's been diagnosed. And two of these guys were running in Speedos anyway. They always had the Speedo with the South African flag on the bum. And then they contacted me and said, we run in Speedos anyway because we like running in Speedos. Can't we get Love Your Nuts Speedos? So I bought 2 Speedos, and it was like prototypes that we created, and they ran in these Speedos at the beginning. And then it snowballed because people then said, oh, well, I like to have a Speedo as well. So it's not always, I would say the majority is not testicular cancer survivors or has got somebody in the family. It's often guys who love sport, and then a lot of them are well built. It's also a way of bragging a little bit because everyone thinks, wow, there's a guy with a beautiful body running in a Speedo, and people take photos. So yeah, it's not always cancer related or testicular cancer that there's a connection to testicular cancer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you able to speak to like the statistics of TC in your area?
It's difficult to find statistic here. The statistics in Africa or South Africa are not up to date, and it's less if I compare to the US or Europe. Testicular cancer is less, but the same, I must say, there's a lot of people that never go to the doctor. The people living in the rural areas, they don't have access to medicine. There will be testicular cancer patients, and they die of it, but they've never been to the doctor. So these cases are not registered anywhere. Mm-hmm. And it's often a language barrier. So in a lot of African cultures, it's a complete taboo to talk about your privates, completely. They don't even have nicknames or funny names like we call it balls and nuts and crown jewels. These words doesn't exist in their language because it's a no-go topic. You don't talk about this. So it's very difficult also to get into these cultures and to explain to them it's important that you check, although it's a topic that they don't talk about at all. And then it's language barriers because often their English is not good enough to understand what you mean. Not only testicular cancer, cancer in general, that somebody understands there's something growing in your body. It's your own body cells, but it's dangerous, and you have to check if something changes. You should go to the doctor. It's something that's far away from them. They often go also to, they're called here sangomas. Sangomas are, you can compare it like a witch doctor in the villages. So that if they don't feel well, they often first go there. And if it's then really bad, then they go to the hospital, and then often it's too late. So the statistics in general, not only testicular cancer, but in general, the statistics are not up to date in Africa because the majority don't have really access to medical care.
Interesting.
And the public hospitals, they're overcrowded. I don't know where these files land up. So it's not a good place to be if it not only cancer in general, if you have to use the public hospitals. They had a protest last year in Johannesburg because they closed down a cancer clinic because of funds. And then people had a protest there. There were women that were diagnosed with breast cancer, and they were on a waiting list for 18 months to get treatment. It's 1.5 years. It's just ridiculous. Then cancer, in most cases, is quicker than the treatment can be. So it's a sad state. So the statistics are not up to scratch, definitely not. I think they're even lacking. I think the latest statistics of South Africa is 2020. They don't even have like 2021 or 22. It's like 2019, 2020 is what you get at the moment. And what they record also is only cases that are sent to the laboratory. That is registered. So if somebody comes into hospital and they see it's cancer, but nothing was sent to the laboratory and that person dies, it's not registered, then he died because of whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah. Not up to standard.
Well, hopefully things will start changing thanks to your work and more awareness.
Yeah, definitely. There is. Lavianats is a member of the Cancer Alliance, and the Cancer Alliance in South Africa is the umbrella organization. And it's about 35 cancer charities in South Africa, and we're all part of that. And we drive and push government that policies are written, that if we started with the main cancers like breast cancer, cervical cancer, prostate cancer, that there are policies in place at government that these people have to be treated. They can't be sent away. So we're pushing that, and slowly we're getting there. But it's a huge mission. But we try to push that.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for somebody who is at the different stages, maybe like pre-diagnosis, just been diagnosed, and going into chemo?
If I think back about my time, and because often, especially once you diagnose, you are often in denial first, and then you're angry at yourself because you say, I should have gone earlier, and you've got the blame game actually against yourself, and you're hard on yourself. And then chemo is, then you always try to be strong. And I think the best advice that I can give is be kind. Be kind to yourself always, because it's a tough journey, and don't be hard on yourself. If you feel like resting, rest. Don't think, I have to get up because it's daylight kind of thing. I can't sleep now kind of thing. You need rest. Your body needs it, and give it to your body. Be kind to yourself. That is actually what I learned about out of cancer is be nice to yourself. Be kind to yourself.
Great advice. Is there anything else that you want to add that I didn't ask about?
The only thing is, well, it's not developed yet, but I've got a cancer school program that actually comes from the US. It's actually, I've got the permission from the Livestrong Foundation to use that program. And it's actually prepared lessons. And I changed the content that it fits into South Africa. I jokingly often say it's not New York and San Francisco anymore. It's like Cape Town and Khayelitsha. Khayelitsha is a township. So I use local examples. I found children here that were willing to tell their story on video, because in that program, kids watch a video where a child shared his or her cancer journey. And during COVID, because I couldn't visit schools, and schools always get these programs that they can use it when, if there's a lesson where teachers say, okay, I've got biology, this fits in here, then it's prepared lessons that they can use it. So obviously during COVID, I couldn't go to schools. Schools were closed and everything went more online, even for teaching. So I wrote a concept of a gaming app where I include that cancer program. Basically, the app is, and it's not developed, that's actually where I raise funds for now, that it's hopefully one day available. So basically, kids float through their body, and it's not testicular cancer only, and they visit the different organs and find out facts and figures about, if they end up in the lung, then it's about facts and risk about lung cancer, then there are questions that they have to answer. If they answer correctly, they get energy bombs, and if they float through the body and they see bad cells being cancer cells, then they can destroy them with the energy bombs. So it's actually a little bit like a battle game, but you visit all the body parts where cancer could be. And my idea is it goes together with the school program, so teachers can use it. A child can play it on his own, or a teacher can say, okay, grade 10B against 10A, and we see who gets the highest average age. So you play not on levels, so you get older. The better you play, the older you get on that app. So it's like, look after your body, look after your health, and there's a good chance that you grow old. And that is the idea behind this thing. So at the moment, it's a concept. At the moment, we're raising funds to get a prototype that we can pitch, hopefully, to a big fish that can actually develop this. And then it's available, because it's an app, then it's actually worldwide available and for everybody to use. And it's going to be a free app. So it's not schools won't pay for it, and it can be used anyway.
Wow.
That is my dream.
That's incredible. So that, you said, is separate from the Livestrong stuff.
Yeah, it's separate.
Okay.
So it's actually developed out of the Livestrong stuff, because I didn't have access to schools during COVID, because I thought I have to do something online. And I downloaded a lot of cancer apps, and the majority of them are information that you can read, or there's a support line or something. But I couldn't find anything where you can play a game and learn about cancer. And we all love playing games, and kids love playing games. And if I can create something like this, while playing a game, you learn about the cancer, and then at the end of the day, you land up in all the organs. You land up in your eye, in your tongue, in your testicle, in your bladder, everywhere we can get cancer. And then the kids learn, well, I can get cancer everywhere or anywhere. So that is what I'm working on at the moment.
That's a great
raising
idea.
funds for.
That's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
Wow. Where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out to you and talk to you?
I'm behind the social media handles. So I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And the handle all three is Love Your Nuts, written as one word. The website is loveyournuts.org, love your nuts written in one word. The telephone number and the email address on the website, it's me. So if somebody's got something private, want to ask something, they're welcome to pop me a message. Yeah, on these platforms, I'm available.
Cool. Torsten Koehler. Is that right?
There you go.
Thank you so much for being on It Takes Balls.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For more information and resources for your testicular cancer journey, visit testicularcancerawarenessfoundation.org. You can also follow us on social media at Testis Cancer. We're on Facebook at Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation.